My cousin moved in with my uncle's family when she was 5, and she's the sister I'm closest to. She encouraged me to just be myself, a meal of 3 big pork shanks, candied fruit, flaky cheese pastries, and xiaolongbao. Yet she ate nothing but boiled vegetables at every meal, bound her feet, practiced dance, and cinched her waist. When we turned 15 and came of age, we held our coming-of-age ceremony together. I became known as the chubby girl, but she took the capital by storm with her dancing. The crown prince's fiancé looked down on me, called off our engagement, and turned around to ask for her hand in marriage. I don't cry, I don't make a fuss, I don't argue, and I don't fight, I just quietly pack my bags. A year later, as the crown prince's consort, she finally had the opportunity to enter the palace to attend a banquet. However, when she looked up, wow, right next to the emperor, I was happily munching on a big pork shank. Her aristocratic mother-in-law slapped her right across the forehead. What are you staring at? That's the imperial consort. Hurry up and kneel. Ancient story time, ancient channel, I hope you all enjoy my stories. Feel free to like and subscribe. The day Huizixin came to my door with the token to call off our engagement, I was munching on a pork knuckle. The pork hock, which had been simmered for a full 3 hours, was fragrant with the sauce. It was tender, chewy, and melted in my mouth. I could have eaten 3 of them at every meal. I had only taken a few bites today when the nanny sent by my mother hurriedly dragged me away. My dear lady, Crown Prince Hua has come to call off the engagement. Why are you still eating? Huizixin, the Crown Prince of Yongnan, is my betrothed since childhood, but ever since the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, his eyes have been fixed on my cousin. He even composed several poems in public praising her beauty. I followed the housekeeper into the main hall, where Huizixin stood before my parents, his chin held high, speaking with complete confidence. Uncle, aunt, no matter what, I'm calling off this engagement today. Jiang Qinshui is so fat, just looking at her makes me want to vomit. No man in his right mind would marry her, and there's no way she could ever be my crown prince's consort. Father clutched his chest, his face flushed with pride, while mother looked as if she were about to faint. But Huizixin continued to close in on him. The engagement between your Jiang family and my marquis's household is already a match made for the better for us. If you can't bear to part with the wealth and prestige of our marquis's household, then let Mian take her place in the marriage. She is gentle and lovely, I've long been fond of her, and she is the one who should marry into the marquis's household as my primary wife. Chaos reigned in front of the hall. Meanwhile, her cousin Lu Mian was hiding behind a pillar, peering out with wide, teary eyes and an innocent expression. With a willowy waist and crescent-shaped eyebrows, her dainty-bound feet, small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, were adorned with lotus-patterned shoes. A gentle breeze rustled the silver bells at her waist, making her appear even more slender and graceful. When I was 5, my parents, worried that I'd get bored, found her to be my playmate. When I was little, my feet often hurt from dance practice, and she would comfort me. Life isn't easy for women, so they should live freely and follow their hearts. Life lasts no more than 100 years. If you can't even choose what you like and dislike, wouldn't that be very hard? Cousin, if you don't like dancing, then don't do it. I was young and believed what she said. From then on, not only did I never practice dance again, but with her encouragement, I started eating a big pork knuckle 3 times a day. Yet she never slacked off. She became a disciple of my dance master, practicing through the coldest days of winter and the hottest days of summer, eating nothing but boiled vegetables at every meal, and even paying a fortune to hire a midwife to bind her waist. Now that we're both 15, I'm as plump as a jade bead, while she is light and graceful, just like Empress Zhao, who could dance on the palm of a hand more than 700 years ago. On the day of her coming-of-age ceremony, she captivated the entire capital with her dance, and all the young men of talent in attendance hailed her as a fairy, while I, standing beside her, was jokingly called the chubby girl. I know my parents aren't reluctant to let this marriage, arranged when I was a child, go because they're clinging to the power and prestige of the marquis's household, but because they're worried I'll never find a better match than the Hua family. At that moment, tears welled up in Lu Mian's eyes, and her voice choked with emotion. Brother Hua, it's all my fault. I'm just a guest in the Lord's mansion, how could I possibly steal my cousin's chance at marriage? My cousin may be a little plump and have a bad temper, but she is, after all, the crown prince's fiancée. Mian Mian is willing to let Brother Hu go to my older sister, but Brother Hu has still forgotten about Mian Mian. It's just that Mian Mian isn't blessed. Hu Zixing looked deeply concerned. Mian Mian, it's precisely because you're so kind that she's taking advantage of you. You're the only one this crown prince wants to marry. If they don't agree... I'll do it, I interrupted Hu Zixing. I've agreed to call off the engagement. I strolled to the center of the hall and handed over the token from the Hu family that had been given at the time of our engagement. We're calling off this engagement. Please, Prince Hu, return the token. Hu Zixing stared in disbelief. Jiang Qingxue, are you really agreeing to this? Aside from this crown prince, there's no one else in the entire capital who would be willing to marry you. Lu Mianmian felt tears welling up in her eyes. Sister, please don't say things you'll regret. Brother Hu is the best man in the capital. Her parents clutched their chests and nearly fainted. Nan Nan. I shook my head at them to reassure them, then strode over to Hu Zixing and held out my hand. It's settled. Once you return the token, our business is done. Whether the crown prince chooses to marry his cousin or someone else at that time will have nothing to do with the Marquis' household. Fine. 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 An inexplicable look of anger flashed across Hu Zixing's face as he yanked the jade token from his waist and hurled it forcefully onto the ground. Fine, I'll give it to you. A scum like you is only fit to be a nun in a temple. Mian Mian is the one this young master loves. Lu Mianmian looked at him with tears in her eyes. Brother Hu, please give my cousin one more chance. For your sake and hers, Mianmian would even be willing to be a concubine. Hu Zixing grabbed Lu Mianmian's hand. Don't talk nonsense. You will definitely be this prince's wife. As for Jiang Qingxue, if she really can't find a husband, I'm willing to give her a chance to become a concubine, for Mianmian's sake. Don't let her push you around again when the time comes. Brother Hu. Lu Mianmian was deeply moved and nestled against Hu Zixing's chest, acting like a little bird clinging to him. Without so much as a glance in their direction, I calmly picked up the jade token from the ground. There's no need. Qingxue's marriage is a matter for her parents to handle. The crown prince need not worry about it. Hu Zixing snorted. Do you think you're Mianmian? Everyone in the capital knows you're the infamous fat girl. What man would want you? It's only because Mianmian is so kind-hearted that you were even allowed to enter the Marquis' mansion as a concubine. Lu Mianmian pressed a handkerchief to her lips. My sister must be feeling so miserable right now, why force herself to put on a brave face? I paid them no mind and just quietly comforted my upset parents. When Hu Zixing saw that I wasn't responding to him, he left with Lu Mianmian. Her mother clutched her chest, her face pale. That ungrateful wretch Lu Mianmian, I raised her out of the goodness of my heart, and yet she's come to steal Shuer's husband. Now that Shuer's engagement has been called off, her reputation is sure to suffer even more. My poor child. Father furrowed his brow and slapped the table. Shuer, it's all right. If you don't want to get married, then don't. At worst, Mom and Dad will take care of you for the rest of your life. I ate and drank as usual, my mood completely unaffected by Hu Zixing's decision to call off the engagement, and preparations for the wedding between Lu Mianmian and Hu Zixing were already underway at the manor. My parents were furious that she had stolen my wedding, so they didn't want her to leave the Earl's mansion to get married. But her parents lived far away in Huizhou, and their family was in decline, so they were unable to provide a dowry for her. Hu Zixing brought Lu Mianmian to my parents, where she alternated between crying and making threats. Her parents, mindful of the more than a decade of care and nurturing Lu Mianmian had received from them, simply could not bear to see her ridiculed by others, so they relented and agreed to let her marry outside the Earl's mansion. I can't be bothered to argue with her either. However, just as I returned home that day, I saw a group of people who had broken into my storage room and were carrying things out. The storeroom is filled with the dowry my parents have been preparing for me over the past decade or so. Every single item is a rare treasure. My favorite peach blossom patterned glass vase was carelessly tossed onto the floor and shattered into pieces, and the calligraphy and paintings my parents had spent so long searching for were casually trampled underfoot. I was seething with rage. Who do you think you are, daring to run amok in the Bow Manor? Guards, arrest them all. The maidservant by my side knew how much I usually cherished these things, so she fearlessly made her way toward them. Only then did Lu Mianmian step out from behind the crowd, a smug smile on her face. Don't be mad, cousin. It's all Brother Hu's fault. He saw the dowry uncle and aunt gave me today and thought it was too meager. He just felt sorry for me. Then I thought, since you're never going to get married anyway, cousin, that's why I had your dowry brought over to me. Brother Hu said that since he's given me this dowry, he'll allow you to enter the mansion as a concubine on my wedding day as compensation. Sister, don't be ungrateful. If you refuse this time, there won't be a next time. In my rage, I laughed bitterly, the corners of my mouth curving upward. Fine. Lu Mianmian paused for a moment, then a hint of contempt quickly flashed across her face. Cousin, if Brother Hu knew how generous you were. Fuck you. I took 2 steps forward and slapped her across the face. What an ungrateful wretch. After all these years of eating and living off the Lord's estate, now she's even setting her sights on my dowry? Before my hand could even come down, Hu Zixin burst through the door and shoved me to the ground. Jiang Qinxue, you wicked woman. I know you're jealous that Mianmian is about to marry me, but it was my idea to move her dowry. You absolutely, positively should not have bullied Mianmian. I had originally planned to treat you well even after I married Mianmian, but the way you're acting now, you're simply not worthy of entering the Marquis's mansion alongside her. The reason I took your dowry was simply because your parents were biased. The dowry they prepared for Mianmian was nothing but a bunch of shabby trinkets. I was just taking back what she was rightfully entitled to. Lu Mianmian's parents didn't prepare any dowry for her, and although the dowry my parents prepared for her wasn't as generous as mine, it far exceeded what ordinary families would provide for a bride. I let out a cold laugh and slowly got to my feet. Lu Mianmian is just staying at the Earl's mansion. The Earl's mansion hasn't even asked her for any money yet, but she's already set her sights on my dowry? If she thinks her dowry is too meager, then she shouldn't take it. Now, return to me every single item of the dowry that was taken from my courtyard, or I'll file a report with the prefect of Jingzhou. I wonder if everyone would be interested to hear that the future crown prince's wife stole someone else's dowry to make up the shortfall. Lu Mianmian looked as if she were about to cry. Cousin, after more than a decade of friendship, all I've ever asked for is this tiny little thing, and yet you've reacted like this. Hu Zixin gritted his teeth. Jiang Qinxue, I never thought you'd be so petty. You're not still thinking about marrying me to become the crown prince's consort, are you? Let me tell you, threatening me like this won't work. This prince loves only Mianmian for the rest of his life. Hoof, you don't need to marry into the Marquis's household, even as a concubine, this prince won't have you. After saying that, he gently pulled Lu Mianmian into his arms and soothed her. It's all right, Mianmian. I, the crown prince, will definitely give you a dowry even greater than hers. All you have to do is walk down the aisle in style. He shot me a fierce glare, then put his arm around Lu Mianmian and walked away. All that was left was me, bending down to pick up the shards of the vase from the floor and the calligraphy and paintings that had been trampled and soiled. Hu Zixin kept his word. Over the next few days, all sorts of gold, silver, jewelry, and precious jade pieces poured into Lu Mianmian's room from the home mansion, and every few days, Lu Mianmian would bring them to me to show off. This is a hibiscus-shaped jade hairpin that Brother Hu went out of his way to find for me all the way from Jiangnan. He said only a rare treasure is worthy of a beauty like me. Brother Hu said the Hu family takes this marriage very seriously. Our wedding banquet was even grander than that of the princess consort. Cousin, I know you've always looked down on me, but the crown prince's consort holds an imperial decree. Once I become the crown prince's consort, you and uncle and aunt will both have to kneel before me. I didn't feel like dealing with her, so I just quietly packed my bags. What? Are you ashamed and want to hide out in the countryside, cousin? But you can't hide forever. Sooner or later, I'm going to make you kneel before me. On the day of their wedding, Lu Mianmian went so far as to have a palanquin custom made with openwork on all four sides, ensuring that people outside could see her clearly from any angle. She wore a brocaded wedding gown, with a golden headpiece and a buyao hair ornament piled high on her head, and sat in the palanquin, radiating an air of nobility. The home mansion was only 2 li away from the Beau mansion, yet she had her palanquin circle the capital of full 2 times, no doubt to make sure everyone knew just how much Wuzixing doted on her. Miss Lu is so beautiful, no wonder both the crown prince and the young lady from the earl's mansion were willing to call off their engagements just to marry her. That chubby girl from the Beau family has no right to compare herself to the crown prince's wife. She's not even a fraction as good as the crown prince's wife, she deserves to have her engagement called off. Lu Mianmian became the envy of everyone, just as she had hoped, and even at the palace banquet, countless people showered her with compliments. I heard that the crown prince refused to take even a concubine for the sake of his crown princess. The earl's household treated the crown princess harshly back then for their daughter's sake, they must be completely taken aback now. They can't even get their own daughter married off. I heard that chubby girl was crying and wailing, begging the crown prince to take her as a concubine, but after he refused, she ran off to the countryside. Ugh, how embarrassing. If I were her, I'd have hanged myself long ago. Lu Mianmian covered the smirk at the corner of her lips with a handkerchief. Don't say that, cousin. I'm truly saddened by the difficulties with your marriage, but I've spoken to Brother Hu several times, and he still refuses to take her into the household. A few days ago, I sweet-talked Brother Hu, and after much persuasion, he finally agreed to give my cousin a chance to come into the mansion as a concubine. My cousin must be over the moon at the thought of coming into the mansion to be Brother Hu's concubine. She was talking happily when suddenly the voice of a young eunuch came from inside the door. The emperor and the imperial consort have summoned Minister Xian, along with all the ladies and young ladies, to enter the hall. The ladies hurriedly lined up, whispering among themselves about this imperial consort, who had rarely been seen in public. Lu Mianmian was also very curious. Holding on to her massive golden crown, she secretly lifted her head. Inside the palace hall, I was sitting next to the emperor, munching on a pork knuckle. Yesterday, the guy next to me insisted on having sex in the afternoon, which meant I missed dinner and didn't even have time for breakfast. Right now, as I'm munching on this pork knuckle that's been simmered in chicken broth for a full 3 hours, it tastes absolutely divine. I was happily taking one bite after another, but the very next moment, I spotted Lu Mianmian standing at the front of the crowd. Everyone knelt to pay their respects, but she alone froze in place as if struck by lightning. No way, that's impossible. Who is she? Seeing this, her mother-in-law, Mrs. Ho, slapped her right across the forehead. What are you staring at? That's the imperial consort. Get down on your knees. Lu Mianmian's legs were planted on the ground like iron pestles. No matter how hard she tried, she just couldn't bring herself to kneel. How could she possibly be an imperial consort? Didn't she run off to the countryside? Wuzixing, who was sitting at the men's table, also noticed that something was off with Lu Mianmian. He followed her gaze and froze in his tracks. Jiang Qinxue? How did you end up there? You're incredibly bold, to actually dare to offend the emperor. Hurry up and get down. I looked utterly helpless, but before I could say a word, the man beside me frowned and snapped at him. How dare you? Are the crown prince and crown princess of Yong'an attempting to rebel by failing to kneel before me and the imperial consort? Lu Mianmian and Wuzixing's knees buckled at the sharp rebuke, and only then did they reluctantly kneel before me to pay their respects. Lu Mianmian hadn't expected to see me here. Even after she finished bowing and stood up, her face remained deathly pale and she looked dazed. But I didn't feel like giving her a hard time, so I just gave her a casual glance and went back to munching on my pork knuckle. She didn't know what she was imagining in her mind, but her face flushed with a mix of red and white, filled with resentment. After a moment, she clenched her wine glass as if she'd made up her mind. Halfway through the banquet, I invited the ladies to the plum garden to admire the plum blossoms. By the time I returned from a quick trip to the restroom, I noticed that Lu Mianmian had, at some point, knelt before Emperor Helian. She changed into a light red gauze gown. The slender sash accentuated Lu Mianmian's delicate waist. Kneeling in the snow, her voice was melodious yet resolute. "Your Majesty, please forgive me. I could not bear to see you deceived by a villain, so today I risk my life to offer this earnest plea. This Jiang Qinxue once harbored feelings for my husband, but my husband discovered that she was of loose morals and stubbornly obstinate, often bullying and humiliating me. After my husband broke off the engagement with her, she continued to pester him relentlessly, repeatedly humiliating and tormenting me, and later even went so far as to express a desire to become my husband's concubine. Although I do not know by what means she entered the palace, a woman like her is in no way worthy of being at the emperor's side." Her back was straight as an arrow, like a lotus blossom emerging from the water at dawn, still glistening with dew. Several of Helian's bodyguards couldn't help but cast sympathetic glances her way, and Helian's gaze also turned toward her. Seeing this, a hint of smugness flashed across her lips, though her voice grew increasingly choked with emotion. "Back when I was staying at the Bo family's residence, Jiang Qinxue and her parents often treated me harshly. I didn't have enough to eat every day, and Jiang Qinxue was always taking my things, but since I was living under someone else's roof, there was really nothing I could do. Later, when I got married, they even withheld my dowry to supplement their own daughter's dowry." As she spoke, tears began to fall from her eyes. "I had no intention of saying any of this, Your Majesty, but for some reason, the moment I saw you, I could no longer hold back my emotions." Helian suddenly spoke up, "Come here. Sit beside me." A hint of joy flashed across Lu Mianmian's face. She instantly lifted her pitiful-looking face, a blush spreading across her cheeks. "Thank you, Your Majesty. But isn't this a bit inappropriate? After all, I am merely—" Just as she was speaking, I stepped out from behind her and sat right next to Helian. "What are you doing standing outside the pavilion? You've been out this long without a hand warmer. If you catch a cold, won't that worry me?" As Helian spoke, he bent down and carefully brushed the snow off my cloak. It was only then that Lu Mianmian realized Helian's remark was directed at me, and her face immediately flushed red and then turned pale. Helian held my hand in his for quite a while, as if only then realizing that she was still kneeling there. "What did you just say?" "Say that again in front of my imperial consort." Lu Mianmian knelt on the ground, gritting her teeth, unable to say a word. I chuckled softly. "Why have you gone quiet, Lady Crown Prince? Do you have a problem with me? You say my parents treated you harshly and didn't let you eat your fill, but as far as I recall, every piece of jewelry and jade hairpin they gave you was worth 1,000 taels. How could they give you jewelry worth thousands of taels yet refuse to let you eat your fill? Is that what you mean, Lady Crown Prince? It's clearly because you're afraid of gaining weight that you eat nothing but the boiled greens on the table at every meal, yet in the end you blame it on my parents." She bit her lip, her eyes filled with hatred. "So what? They only gave me jewelry so I'd wear it in public to keep up appearances, just so others would praise them. That's just utterly hypocritical." I let out a cold laugh and turned to ask Helian, who was standing next to me. "My parents have raised the Crown Prince's consort for over a decade, always treating her as their own daughter. All the servants in this household can attest to this. It is not something the Crown Prince's consort can simply deny with a few words. Given the kindness they have shown her over these past 10-odd years, they could be considered her surrogate parents. Your Majesty, what is the punishment for children who slander their parents?" He Lian picked up his teacup, took a sip, and said in a detached tone, according to the law, he is to receive 60 strokes of the cane and be exiled to the northwest. Since she is the crown prince's consort, let's settle for 80 strokes of the cane. There's no need to exile her. What? Lu Mianmian couldn't stay on her knees any longer. Your Majesty, I am innocent. You must not believe that harlot's words. He Lian chuckled softly. I don't believe it. Does my beloved consort believe you? Take him away. Several guards grabbed Lu Mianmian by the arms and legs and began dragging her out. Halfway through, Hu Zixing suddenly darted out from somewhere and stood with his chest thrust forward, blocking Lu Mianmian's path. Your Majesty, Mianmian has always been innocent at heart. Everything she says is true. If it weren't for the harsh treatment she received from her parents and the Jiang family, how could she be so frail? You mustn't punish her just because she spoke a few words of truth. Jiang Qingxue is full of lies, how can we trust a word she says? I chuckled. Hu Zixing, did you actually see my parents mistreating her with your own eyes? If you're so certain, does that mean you've been lurking outside my cousin's door every day, spying on her? Hu Zixing stuck out his chin. So what if I didn't see it with my own eyes? Mianmian told me all about it. You didn't know that, did you? Every time you guys picked on her, she'd tell me. She has a kind heart and wouldn't lie. It's actually you who's jealous that Mianmian married me, that's why you're framing her here. I stood up and shook my head slightly. The Lord's household expenses have been recorded in ledgers all these years. A glance at them will make it clear whether Lu Mianmian has been mistreated. I will have a copy of these ledgers transcribed for everyone to see, so they can judge for themselves. Lu Mianmian hadn't expected me to bring up the ledger. A cold sweat instantly broke out on her forehead, and she grabbed Hu Zixing's shirt. Brother Hu, never mind. We won't hold it against sister. She has a crush on you, so it's only natural she'd feel resentful now that I'm marrying you. Cousin, all that is in the past now. I've forgiven you all. As soon as Lu Mianmian finished speaking, she snuggled into Hu Zixing's arms. I let out a cold laugh. This isn't up to you. Once this has been transcribed, I will have someone calculate the total amount of silver the Crown Prince's consort has spent at the Earl's residence over the years. Since she refuses to acknowledge the Earl's family's kindness in raising her all these years, she will be required to repay the full amount with interest when the time comes. Hu Zixing snorted coldly. Fine, I'll watch. Someone immediately brought out the ledgers, and once every single silver coin had been tallied, it turned out she had spent more than even I, the legitimate eldest daughter. Lu Mianmian's face went completely pale. Hu Zixing stared at the ledger in disbelief. No way. These ledgers must be fake. I cast a casual glance his way. Did the Crown Prince's consort really teach herself to dance so masterfully that she captivated the entire capital? Back then, the Bo family hired the best dance instructor in the capital for her. The monthly tuition alone was nearly 500 taels, and when you add in the cost of her special dance costumes and shoes, the total was far more than 500 taels. But I only eat a few pork knuckles at each meal, each one costs a few hundred won, so it only comes to a few dozen taels of silver a month. Surely the Crown Prince and his wife aren't trying to renege on their debt, are they? Hu Zixing turned green with anger, so he had no choice but to have someone bring a silver note and slap it down in front of me. All settled. Can I go now? No, said He Lian, who had remained silent until then, suddenly letting out a cold laugh. I recall that the Crown Prince's consort was also sentenced to 80 strokes of the cane, but that's not to say it can't be negotiated. Since Crown Prince cares so deeply for your wife, you may take the 80 lashes in her place. This punishment may seem light, but in reality 80 lashes would leave you crippled or at least with a lame leg. No. Hu Zixing widened his eyes, about to refuse, when Lu Mianmian hurriedly threw herself at him. Brother Hu, I knew you'd help me. Brother Hu Mian loves you the most. So Hu Zixing was dragged away. By the time Mrs. Deng arrived, the 80 lashes had already been administered. She was holding Hu Zixing, whose body was a bloody mess, and was nearly in tears. When he heard that he had been dragged down by Lu Mianyan, his expression darkened instantly. She didn't dare snap at He Lian, nor did she dare question me, so she could only take out all her anger on Lu Mianyan. After returning home, Lu Mianyan was made to kneel in the ancestral hall every day as punishment. I was having tea in the palace when I heard the gossip about the Ho family's mansion. He Lian was sitting next to me, smiling as he poured me some tea. He Lian and I met after my coming-of-age ceremony. At the time, Hu Zixing, who was still my fiancé, was constantly by Lu Mianyan's side. He would even write poems from time to time to mock my figure, just to curry favor with her. To spare my parents any heartache, I had no choice but to slip outside the mansion to cry. That was when He Lian showed up. After listening to my tearful plea, he didn't comfort me. Instead, he turned around and went to the restaurant to buy me a pork hock. I couldn't help myself, I cried while I ate. After that, whenever I felt sad, I would go to that tree, and He Lian would always buy me a pork hock. At the time, I didn't know who he was, but later, on the day Hu Zixing publicly declared his love for Lu Mianyan and asked for her hand in marriage, I cried my heart out. He Lian asked me this while helping me cut up the pork hock. Would you like to go somewhere where no one dares to make fun of you, and where you can eat whatever you want? I wondered, is there really a place like that? He Lian nodded, a seductive gleam in his eyes. Become my concubine, and I'll make sure you can eat as much as you want for the rest of your life. I agreed. Not long after Lu Mianyan married Hu Zixing, I also entered the palace. He Lian had been in poor health since childhood, and the imperial astrologer said he should not hold a grand wedding before reaching the age of 30. On top of that, since I am not one to seek the limelight, I rarely make public appearances. But once I entered the palace, sure enough, no one dared to make fun of me anymore, and He Lian indulged my every whim. I asked him, "Don't you mind that I'm fat?" But he said, "I've always been frail, and if I marry a wife who's as skinny as a bamboo pole, wouldn't we look like a pair of chopsticks standing side by side? Besides, what do they know? You're just a little plump, my mother said that's a sign of good fortune." But I never expected that just a few days later, Hu Zixing would limp back into the palace. On the Empress Dowager's birthday, all officials entered the palace to celebrate. He Lian, whether because he was thinking of Hu Zixing's limp or simply didn't want to see him, specifically issued an edict exempting him from coming to the palace. But to my surprise, he actually limped his way into the palace and, with tears in his eyes, blocked my path. "Schwer, can we talk?" I really didn't know what I could possibly talk to him about, so I flatly refused. But he grabbed my sleeve. "Schwer, I know you still care about me. Ever since I became lame, that venomous woman Lu Mianyan has been fooling around with men outside the mansion. Only now do I realize that, back then, she was sleeping with plenty of other men besides me." As he spoke, he clenched his teeth, his face contorted with anger. "She only chose me on purpose because I'm your fiancé, she doesn't love me at all. She just wants to use me to get back at you, Schwer. I regret it. You rushed into the palace to marry the emperor just to get my attention and make me jealous. Now that I understand your feelings, let's elope, to a place where no one knows us. I've even packed my bags." I was absolutely stunned. I had the best food and clothes in the palace, why on earth would I go with him? Besides, I've long since fallen for He Lian. My feelings for him used to be nothing more than a matter of him being my fiancé. If my fiancé weren't him, Hu Zixing, but someone else, I would feel the same way about that person. I quickly refused and slipped away in a hurry with my maid. But halfway through the banquet, one of Mother's maids suddenly came to find me and said that Mother had sprained her ankle. I rushed over only to find Hu Zixing, the very person I had just turned down, in the room. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a madman. "Schwer, you're supposed to be mine. If you're crazy, go ahead and be crazy, I definitely won't like you either. No way. It's okay. Even if you don't like me, it's fine. After today, you'll have no choice but to come with me. Only then did I notice the strange smell in the air. I hurriedly covered my mouth and nose, but it was already too late. Before I passed out, I saw Hu Zixing's maniacal grin. At the birthday banquet, as the guests were drinking and toasting, someone suddenly noticed that the imperial consort was missing. Just as the palace maids were frantically searching everywhere, Lu Mianmian suddenly stood up, her eyes red-rimmed. I just saw the imperial consort and my husband walking one after the other toward that palace. They should be there by now. I knew all along that my cousin still had feelings for my husband, but I never imagined they would do such a thing at Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. It is my fault for not keeping a closer eye on them. The crowd erupted in an uproar. The Empress Dowager shot Lu Mianmian a cold glance. Aren't you going to show me the way? While Lu Mianmian wept, she secretly summoned all the noblewomen to follow her. When he reached the door, he could indeed hear all sorts of obscene language coming from inside, along with the heavy breathing of a man and a woman. My cousin is truly foolish. His Majesty and Her Majesty the Empress Dowager have been so kind to her, yet she went and did something like this. I hope that once Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is inside, she'll take pity on her and spare her life. I am willing to divorce the Crown Prince to make way for my cousin and her husband. The Crown Prince's wife is truly kind. Even though Jiang Qingxue was sleeping with her husband, she still pleaded on their behalf. The Crown Prince's wife is so generous-hearted. It's truly a pity she had to run into such a scoundrel. Doing something like this at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet is a crime worthy of being torn to pieces. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor will absolutely not let her off the hook. Lu Mianmian let a faint smile play on her lips as she looked at the vermilion door in front of her and pushed it open. She rushed to the bed first and pulled the woman off it. The woman, wearing nothing but a sheer gown, was dragged to the center of the room, and everyone's eyes turned toward her. Lu Mianmian covered her eyes and wept uncontrollably. Cousin, how could you do such a thing? How can you face the Emperor and the Empress Dowager? If you told me earlier that you liked the Crown Prince, as sisters, I would certainly have been willing to give him up for you. But how could you have been with him behind the Emperor's back? Especially at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet? Cousin, it's not too late to admit your mistake now. However, after crying for quite a while, she realized that no one there was playing along with her. Everyone was staring at her with strange looks on their faces. She looked down and only then realized that the woman on the ground wasn't me, but Princess Xiqing, the Empress Dowager's niece who kept countless male lovers in the capital and had a passion for handsome men. With a cold smile, she stood up, smoothed out the sheer robe draped over her, and walked toward Lu Mianmian. It's all your fault, Your Highness. Lu Mianmian's face was filled with terror. How could it be you? No, this is all a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Where's Jiang Qingxue? Where is she hiding? Before she could finish speaking, Princess Xiqing slapped her across the face. Did you come up with my sister-in-law's name too? You aren't trying to harm her again, are you? Lu Mianmian kept explaining, I didn't. But the slaps kept landing one after another on her face. It's all Jiang Qingxue's fault. She did this to me on purpose. She must be hiding in a room somewhere with Hu Zixing. Are you calling me? I stepped out from behind the noblewomen who were watching the commotion, with He Lian following close behind me. Well, then you're in for a disappointment. I knew all along that He Lian and Lu Mianmian weren't up to any good. Of course I was prepared. Lu Mianmian's face went pale in an instant. How could that be? How is that possible? I clearly... But the only response she received was a slap from Princess Xiqing. How dare you not bow to my imperial sister-in-law? Kneel before this princess. Lu Mianmian was kicked to her knees by her and looked up at me in a daze. The Empress Dowager shook her head. Such scum actually dares to scheme against this old woman's daughter-in-law? Has the House of Yongnan become too bold? The lady of the Marquis of Yongnan hurriedly knelt down to beg for forgiveness. It is all because I have failed to discipline her properly. Once we return, I will certainly discipline her properly. He Lian, standing behind me, snorted derisively. My beloved consort has been humiliated and schemed against time and again by your son and daughter-in-law. Do you really think a few words of discipline from you can make up for that? In my view, the title of the Marquis of Yongnan is far too grand. Effective today, the Marquis of Yongnan is demoted to the Earl of Yongnan. You may take your time to reflect on this. The lady of the Marquis of Yongnan's legs gave way, and she instantly fell to her knees. Hu Zixing, who had been lying in bed, also woke up and staggered out of bed. Schwerer. Mrs. Ho quickly covered his mouth with her hand. Someone, knock that good-for-nothing out and take him back. The others slowly dispersed, leaving only Lu Mianmian still kneeling on the ground. I walked over and lifted her chin. I've treated you well, haven't I? I've never been able to understand why, ever since you came to the mansion, I've always treated you like my best friend, yet you hate me so much that you're determined to kill me. Lu Mianmian clenched her teeth. Best friends? To you, I'm nothing more than a plaything. With a single word, you tore me away from my parents. If it weren't for you, I would surely have grown up under my parents' care. I would have been their favorite daughter, not just a cousin living as a guest in the Beau family's mansion. I see. I smiled silently, not telling her that the reason I'd asked my parents back then to let her be my playmate was because I'd overheard her parents talking. They said that if she wasn't chosen, they'd sell her to someone else as a child bride, so she wouldn't have to compete with Yaozu for food at home. I took pity on her and begged my parents to bring her back to the mansion, where she was provided with the same clothes, housing, and daily necessities as I was. I never expected that she would end up resenting me because of it. After a while, she was dragged back to the Ho mansion. Mrs. Ho had originally intended to have her die suddenly to put an end to the matter. But unexpectedly, Princess Xixing couldn't stop thinking about Hu Zixing after that day. She wanted Hu Zixing to be her male consort, and she didn't want her reputation to be tarnished by Lu Mianmian's death. Lady Ho, oh no, Lady Bo, understood her hint and immediately forced Lu Mianmian and Hu Zixing to divorce, then sent Lu Mianmian away. The ones who came to pick her up were none other than her own parents, whom she had missed for more than a decade. Lu Mianmian hadn't expected Lady Bo to be so kind. She rushed toward them in delight, but didn't notice that they were eyeing her as if she were a piece of merchandise. That very night, they sold her to the Yihong courtyard in the county seat. Lu Mianmian couldn't believe it, so she tricked a man into buying her freedom and ran back home. Sure enough, she was sold again. After several such incidents, she finally understood everything. On a dark and stormy night, she fled back home, set the house on fire, and perished in the flames along with her parents. After the Marquis's estate was downgraded to a Viscount's estate because of Hu Zixing, everyone in the Marquis's household came to hate him intensely. Since they had more than one son, they immediately decided to have his younger brother inherit the Viscount's estate. As for him, she was escorted to the princess's mansion in a small palanquin by Lady Bo and became one of Princess Xixing's male favorites. He had a limp and a bad temper, and since the princess's mansion had no shortage of men, he soon fell out of favor. After that, I never heard from him again. In the bedchamber, I was leaning against He Lian's lap, squinting as I savored the lychees he had peeled for me. A few days ago, the imperial physician diagnosed that he had made a full recovery, and the imperial preceptor also said that he no longer needed to worry about those things. So he put our wedding plans on the agenda. I did you an injustice last time when I made you a consort. This time, I will hold a grand ceremony so that everyone knows you are my empress. He Lian was so excited he couldn't sleep. He couldn't wait to personally review every detail of the wedding. Qin Shui, I will make sure you become the happiest woman in the world. When the big day finally arrived, every little detail left me both amazed and deeply moved. Qinxue, I love you. I clasped his hand and pressed it against my still flat belly. Huaner and I feel the same way. Fireworks burst across the sky as Lian looked on in surprise. The path ahead is clear. A strong wind breaks through the dawn,